Welcome in, everyone. Settle in, because this is going to be a long one. Today, we're diving deep into Dallas Cowboys news, rumors, contracts, and the bigger picture of where this franchise is heading as we inch closer to the 2026 offseason. No quick hits today. No rush takes. This is about context, leverage, timing, and why the next few months might quietly determine whether the Cowboys are legitimate contenders or stuck spinning the same wheel yet again. Let's start with the headline that matters most right now: George Pickens and the Cowboys contract situation. According to the Dallas Morning News, the Cowboys have not yet begun contract talks with George Pickens, and that alone should grab your attention. Not because it means something is wrong, but because of when it's happening. We are approaching the NFL Combine, which has become one of the most important unofficial deadlines in the league. That's when agents, executives, cap managers, and decision-makers all end up in the same city, having conversations that don't always show up on the transaction wire. And right now, Dallas is quiet. Pickens himself has been calm, measured, and honestly pretty mature about the whole thing. He said he's willing to wait it out, that he'd love to stay in Dallas, but he understands he can't control the process. That matters, because there are two types of players in these situations: the ones who posture publicly and the ones who let the business play out. Pickens is doing the latter. But don't confuse calm with leverage, because George Pickens has plenty of leverage. This is a player who changed the geometry of the Cowboys' offense. Defensive coverage has shifted. Safeties stayed deeper. One-on-one matchups opened up for others. And most importantly, when things broke down, Dak Prescott trusted Pickens to make plays that simply weren't available before he arrived. That's why Dak's comments matter so much here. Dak didn't hedge. He didn't dance around it. He said keeping Pickens is vital. He said it must be done. And when your franchise quarterback uses language that strong, it tells you something important. Internally, the Cowboys already know Pickens isn't optional. The only question is how they keep him. This is where the franchise tag enters the conversation, and Pickens didn't shut that down either. He said if it's the best thing for both sides, he's willing to do it. That's not a threat. That's not resistance. That's a player saying, let's be smart. But here's the part fans need to understand. The franchise tag is leverage for the team, not a solution. Tagging Pickens in 2026 might buy Dallas time, but it also pushes money forward, increases long-term cap pressure, and risks turning a clean extension into a year-by-year negotiation. We've seen this movie before, and it rarely ends with the team saving money. Which brings us to the NFL Combine, the key date in all of this. If you get to the Combine with no traction on a deal, two things happen. First, Pickens' market becomes clearer as teams compare upcoming draft classes and future free agent pools. Second, Dallas loses informational leverage. Everyone starts to know who's serious and who's stalling. This is why the Combine isn't about workouts for veterans. It's about conversations in hotel lobbies. Now let's pivot briefly to Javonte Williams, because his situation is different but still important. Talks with Williams are currently on hold until he hires an agent. That's not unusual, but it does delay things. And timing matters here too. Williams isn't just depth. He represents flexibility for this offense. A physical runner, a tone setter, someone who can grind in December. If Dallas waits too long, they risk competing with a thinner market or losing him to a team that values his skill set more urgently. All of this ties into a broader theme you're going to hear throughout this podcast. Dallas is at a crossroads between patience and urgency. They've been patient before. Sometimes it works. Often it costs them. And that tension between waiting for the right deal and recognizing when a player is foundational is the backdrop for everything else we're going to talk about today. Up next, we'll shift into Cowboys roster news, including why re-signing Will Grier actually matters more than people think, and then we'll dive headfirst into free agent rumors, starting with Reed Blankenship and the Demario Davis smoke that's starting to feel less accidental. Dallas Cowboys rumors today are heating up around a potential defensive overhaul in 2026, and Cowboys insider Nick Harris has laid out one of the most aggressive and intriguing offseason blueprints we've heard in years. The central theme of Harris's plan is simple but overdue. The Cowboys must actually spend money in free agency if they want to fix a defense that has flash talent but consistently fallen short against elite competition. Rather than relying solely on bargain signings or draft-only development, Harris envisions Dallas attacking proven defensive playmakers while blending them with a young, ascending core already on roster. Up front, the Cowboys' defensive line would continue to be a strength, anchored by key returners such as Donovan Ezraku off the edge and interior disruptors Quinnen Williams and Osa Odigizwa. The addition of veterans like Jadeveon Clowney or Kenny Clark would give Dallas a blend of power, experience, and versatility, allowing defensive coordinator flexibility in both odd and even fronts. This group would be designed to win at the line of scrimmage consistently, something the Cowboys have lacked in big moments against physical offenses. With a deeper rotation, Dallas could finally keep its pass rush fresh late into games, where leads have too often slipped away. At linebacker, Harris's proposed additions would signal a major philosophical shift. Bringing in Nakobe Dean from the Eagles would give the Cowboys a high IQ, instinctive linebacker who thrives in reading plays and attacking downhill. Pairing him with Quincy Williams from the Jets would inject speed, aggression, and sideline-to-sideline range into the second level of the defense. Combined with the return of DeMarvion Overshown, Dallas would suddenly have one of the fastest and most athletic linebacker groups in the NFC. This trio would be built to counter modern offenses that stress defenses horizontally and target linebackers in coverage. The secondary is where Harris's plan becomes especially ambitious. Darren Bland remains the cornerstone at cornerback, but the vision includes surrounding him with long, physical, and versatile defenders. Siobhan Rebel's return provides size and competitiveness, while the addition of LSU corner Mansour Delane adds length, ball skills, and press man ability. Delane's inclusion in both free agency projections and draft monitoring underscores how highly Harris values his fit in Dallas' scheme. This unit would be built not just to survive, but to challenge elite receivers at the line of scrimmage and force quarterbacks to hold the ball longer. At safety, Malik Hooker's steady presence would be complemented by a new wave of talent. Dylan Thiemann from Oregon stands out as a versatile, instinctive safety who excels in both coverage and run support. Whether acquired through free agency or the draft, Thiemann represents the type of modern safety the Cowboys need, someone who can disguise coverages, play deep, or drop into the box without becoming a liability. His skill set would allow Dallas to be far more creative defensively, especially against motion-heavy offenses. Looking ahead to the 2026 NFL Draft, Harris identifies several round one targets that could push this defensive rebuild over the top. Ohio State safety Caleb Downs is the crown jewel, a potential franchise-defining defender with elite instincts, physicality, and leadership. Sonny Styles, also from Ohio State, offers a hybrid linebacker profile that could thrive in today's positionless defenses. Jermud McCoy from Tennessee brings sticky coverage skills at corner, while edge rushers like T.J. Parker from Clemson and Keldrick Fall from Auburn provide explosive upside as pass rush specialists. The common thread among these prospects is athleticism, versatility, and immediate impact potential. Ultimately, Nick Harris's offseason plan represents a bold departure from the Cowboys' conservative tendencies. It's a vision that blends star power with youth, aggression with discipline, and financial commitment with long-term planning. If Dallas truly follows this blueprint, spending in free agency while drafting elite defensive talent, the Cowboys could finally field a defense capable of matching their offensive firepower and making a legitimate Super Bowl push in 2026. For a franchise under constant scrutiny, this kind of decisive action may be exactly what it takes to change the narrative, wins or losses, but for the courage or hesitation of the decisions made when the future demanded clarity. The Dallas Cowboys are no strangers to pressure, but what looms ahead of the 2026 season is not just competitive tension. It is an identity test. This franchise has always lived in the space between legacy and expectation, between the echoes of 5 Super Bowl rings and the harsh reality of a league that punishes nostalgia. Every roster decision now carries the weight of history, and every dollar spent or saved could determine whether the Cowboys finally evolve or remain trapped in a cycle of almost. The conversation begins, inevitably, with the salary cap. For years, Dallas has walked a tightrope between rewarding proven veterans and preserving flexibility for the future. That balancing act has finally caught up with the front office. The rumored decision to move on from Kenny Clark is not merely a football move, it is a philosophical statement. Cutting ties with a veteran of his stature sends shockwaves because it challenges the emotional bond fans form with players who have worn the star through battles, injuries, and playoff heartbreaks. Yet the NFL is not built on sentiment. It is built on efficiency, value, and timing. Saving over $20 million in cap space is not a luxury. It is a weapon, and contenders know when to use it. Last season exposed a harsh truth about the Cowboys' interior defensive investment. The resources poured into the line were meant to create dominance, to collapse pockets, to control games from the inside out. Instead, the results were inconsistent and, in critical moments, insufficient. When a unit fails to justify its cost, tough questions must be asked. Is leadership alone worth elite money? Or does production always have to come first? Moving on from Kenny Clark would hurt, but clinging to an expensive past could hurt more. Championship teams are often defined by the veterans they let go, not just the stars they retain. While the defense wrestles with financial reality, the offense faces a different kind of threat, external pressure from rivals eager to exploit uncertainty. George Pickens represents more than a wide receiver. He is the emotional engine of the Cowboys' passing attack. His breakout season, punctuated by an elite PFF grade and highlight reel catches, placed him firmly among the league's premier playmakers. Losing him would not just weaken the depth chart. It would fracture the offensive identity Dallas has worked so hard to build. Free agency is ruthless. Other teams do not care about your plans, your culture, or your long-term vision. They see opportunity, and they strike. The Broncos circling Pickens is a reminder that talent attracts predators. The Cowboys must decide whether they are willing to pay the premium required to keep elite talent in-house. The franchise tag is a short-term solution, a pause button that buys time but not peace. A long-term deal, however, is a declaration, a signal to the locker room and the league that Dallas protects its own. Letting George Pickens walk would echo past mistakes, moments when financial caution overshadowed competitive urgency. The Cowboys cannot afford to repeat history while claiming to chase greatness. Every dynasty understands this simple truth. Stars are not replaceable. Schemes change, coordinators rotate, but elite players anchor eras. Pickens is that kind of player, and the cost of losing him would ripple through the offense for years. As the wide receiver situation demands financial commitment, the running back position tells a different story, one of restraint, creativity, and strategic discipline. The modern NFL has redefined the value of running backs, and Dallas has learned this lesson the hard way. Overpaying for pass production has consistently limited roster flexibility, forcing compromises elsewhere. The blueprint now is clear: find efficiency, not headlines. Tyler Allgeier embodies that philosophy. Quietly productive in Atlanta, he has thrived without fanfare, delivering consistent yardage with a physical style that wears down defenses. He may not dominate national conversations, but his film tells a story of vision, balance, and toughness, traits that translate seamlessly into Dallas' inside zone scheme. At a projected cost that barely dents the cap, Allgeier represents the kind of smart acquisition that allows contenders to allocate resources where they matter most. Replacing a 1,200-yard rusher is never simple, but it is necessary when the market inflates value beyond reason. Dallas does not need flash in the backfield. It needs reliability. Allgeier offers that, and in doing so, he frees the front office from repeating the mistakes of emotional spending. This is how modern teams stay competitive, by investing in systems, not just names. The offensive conversation, however, cannot exist in isolation. Football remains a complementary game, and Dallas learned painfully in 2025 that offensive firepower means little when the defense collapses under pressure. The secondary, in particular, became a liability, exposed week after week by disciplined quarterbacks and creative play callers. Coverage busts, missed assignments, and a lack of communication defined too many Sundays. Fixing that unit is not optional, it is foundational. This is where the potential addition of Reed Blankenship enters the narrative. Familiarity matters in football, especially in the defensive backfield, where trust and communication are everything. Blankenship's prior connection with Christian Parker provides more than comfort. It offers continuity. Despite a difficult season in Philadelphia, his earlier production demonstrated instincts and discipline that align with what Dallas desperately needs. A reunion would not be a gamble. It would be a calculated attempt to stabilize a fractured unit. Culture change does not happen overnight. It begins with accountability, clarity, and players who understand expectations before they step onto the field. Bringing in defenders who already know the system accelerates that process. It allows coaches to teach nuance instead of basics, to refine instead of rebuild from scratch. For a secondary that has lacked identity, this kind of familiarity could be transformative. Behind all these moves looms the shadow of leadership. Jerry Jones has never shied away from bold decisions, but boldness must now be paired with precision. The league has evolved, and the Cowboys